Hello and welcome to my tutorial disc on how to create 2D type imagery using Lightwave. A lot of people will jump right in and apply your supercell shader and possibly your cell look edges without really know what's going on. I've developed a number of techniques that create a better look to the 2D, and it also helps you really understand how the 2D look can be accomplished. Some of these tricks are old hat, some of them are brand new, but let's start right off with some basics on how this is done. So what I have here is my Lightwave 8.01 layout. However, I have gone in and I have selected the interface, the default 7.5. This is because I believe the default 7.5 is a little more conducive to teaching, and also there's a lot of people who are still using 7.5. So that's why this looks a little funky, also because it needs to be shrunk down to keep it practical for the tutorial purposes. So right now I've got a fresh screen, a clear screen, and I'm going to add close to the simplest of all objects, which is just a sphere. Now this is just a 1 meter sphere, 1 meter being my default size. Go to my camera view. If I render this out, we will see, sure enough, there is a default sphere, 1 meter sphere using the default surface. How do we get this to look like a cartoon image? Well, if we go into our surface editor, jump straight into our shaders, select Supercell Shader, you can see it's giving us this banding. And it looks kind of cartoony. If it was in a rest of a cartoon environment, it might look better. Let's just take it from here, see how we can dress this up a little bit. One thing I like to do is give myself a backdrop to work with. And it can be anything, and in real life you will probably want it over black with an alpha channel so that you can composite it and do some post-processing. But for right now, I'm going to turn my background to complete white. We'll see what that does. And it looks a little bit more like a sheet of paper, and it's already looking a little more cartoony. Let's go in and apply our cell look edges. Now, cell look edges are applied under the object properties with the object selected. It's applied on a per object basis. And we're just going to go straight to silhouette edges, which really just means the edges around or the where the polygons break off from the rest of the object. And if I just simply go silhouette edges and I have my supercell shader, we render this out. Sure enough, we have some edges on there. It looks really thin though, doesn't it? Well, that's easy enough. If we click over here, we have small, medium, large. All this really does is medium is 2 pixels, large is 3 pixels. If we do 3 pixels, we'll render this out. And we can see, it's much thicker than it was before. Go to my properties, put this back to 1, render it, and there is our 3 pixel thickness, there is our 1 pixel thickness. Sometimes if you want to go nuts, you can punch in any number you want. Here we have 10, which will give us a 10 pixel line around the edge, which you may or may not want. Interesting thing is that you can put in fractions or decimals. Here's 1.5. Oh, let's make it 2.5. And a little later on, we'll get into more detail with this. Because usually what you want is between the pixels. The answers lie between the pixels. Another thing worth noting is that the cell look edges, even though it's just running a pixel around the edge, will acknowledge anti-aliasing. So here we have the same thing with anti-aliasing turned on. Here's without, might be a little difficult to see here without anti-aliasing. With anti-aliasing, of course, it's much smoother. And let's go back and do one more tweak to our surface here. Even though it's got supercell shader and that's kind of locked in, you can play with these settings. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on here. You can play with them and take a look, but basically it moves these bands back and forth. The easiest thing to do is the cell shader really acknowledges the diffuse level. If I take the diffuse down, which simply means how much it reacts to light, and knock that down, look, the cell shader is making it all darker. As I increase, it's moving back. I can punch in a super amount, and it's backing it up even more. And if we give a render here, look at that. Now I'm going to kind of jump ahead and change my base color to white, which is actually the same white as the background. Now, see how that disappears? It's because the front part, put this back to 100, that part there, the surface color white is the same white as my background. But if we have, because of cell look edges, we have our edge being drawn around there. Now this is very soft here and a little softer there. We can go in and set our settings on the super cell shader, but to me I'd rather go in and just roll these textures myself, doing it natively in Lightwave, since you're going to be changing the settings manually anyway. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to my surface editor right here. Actually, what I'm going to do is replace my ball here. Replace with object file, do it with the same thing. This is just our default ball. It still has the cell edges because I did replace. I'm going to turn that off. Render this, and we just have our 1 meter sphere with the default surface. I'm going to go in and change the color to 100% white. Render that. And because we still have diffuse on, it's being shaded. But what if I set this to 100% luminous? See what happens to our sample sphere? It completely disappears. But look at this. If I look at my alpha image, that's still in there. It's just that we have an absolute 100% white object over a 100% white background. Well, that doesn't seem to do us a lot of good. So let's put our edges on. And what do we have? We have a circle. Now, this seems like a lot of work or a long way to go to get this, but that's just because we took some turns earlier on. All I did was load up my object, applied 100% white to a 100% white background, and gave it 100% luminosity. Now, this isn't all that impressive, but what if we replace that ball with a more complex object like, oh, say, our default Lightwave cow? Alright, we have that here. If we render it out, okay, there's the cow. And we're all used to looking at the cow. Let's see what happens when we apply the super cell shader. You can see right away it's giving us that banding. And it, you know, if you squint a little bit, it kind of looks like your typical anime style shading. Let's turn off our fractal noise for the hide and render it once more. And it's kind of looking like It's kind of cartoony shading. I suppose it would help even more if we turned on our cell shader here, cranked up our diffuse just a little bit, and maybe a little bit of luminosity. Change our background color, make it brighter. And we've got something that looks like it is trying to pretend to be it looks like a 3D program that's attempting to look like it's hand drawn. We're getting real used to this look, so we're going to play with that. We're going to take the cell shader off. I'm going to go back to 100% luminosity, 0% diffuse. Okay, that's off. Let's see what happens when we render this now. So it's kind of looking more hand-drawn. Notice we have, I only affected the hide surface of the cow. We still have the original hooves and udder and horns and all that. So what we're going to do copy, paste, 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 paste. What would have been easier to do in the beginning if I just multi-selected and made everything white and 100% luminous, but then you wouldn't have seen what I've done. So we're going to render this, and we've got kind of the outline of the cow, and we've lost a lot of the details. So we're going to go back here to our edges, and I'm going to go to surface borders. First of all, I'm going to make my silhouette edges a little bit thicker. My surface borders, now the surface borders is exactly what it sounds like. It is when one surface butts up against another surface, as in the hooves and the hide, or the hide and the eyes, or the hide and the lips. So, and I'm going to take that down to 0.75. Let's take a look at this. And we've got some edge here. We're not getting, and we've got around the nose because the nostril was there, and we have the lips. For some reason, we don't have the eyes. Let's make this cow a little bit more in your face and see what we wind up with. And we still lost the eyes. Let's take another look at that. Surface borders. This setting here, set Z edge scale. Okay, the lower you set this is a real tricky setting. It's how it decides what lines get drawn and what lines do not get drawn. And that was 0.990, and now we're going to do it again with 0.998. And let's see what difference we get here. That's with 990, 998. You can see the edges are calculated just a little bit differently. Now, in our eyes, still not. We've completely lost our eyes. Well, some things just decide to be difficult. Of course, I can always go in since I still have all my surfaces separate. I can still go in and change that. So this is the very basic, very basic way of creating 2D with our 3D program. I'll just clear scene, which is changing my background to a solid color. objects, choose a different color. Go to my camera view, surface editor, default color, and let's choose a different color. In 100% luminous, 0% diffuse. Doesn't really look like a 3D object, does it? Give it some edge. And there we are, looking very hand-drawn. Now, what possible use could this be? Well, let's take a practical application in the next step where we will be duplicating the look of a blueprint, a classic blueprint.